Hi, thanks for joining us on Resilience Radio, where we explore the art and science of thriving in a turbulent world. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Hoops. If you're listening to this show live and have a question or comment, we'd love to have you call in at 347-826-7314. That's 347-826-7314. You can find additional episodes on the web at blogtalkradio.com/resilience-radio. Good afternoon. Welcome to Resilience Radio. One of the things that I've been really fascinated by as I've studied resilience over the years is that there are many other concepts that are in the same general family as resilience, including things like adaptability, grit, flexibility. I first encountered the notion of Sisu in talking with some colleagues in Finland. They described it as a particularly Finnish cultural element and introduced me to today's guest, Emilia Lahti, who has focused her professional work on the topic of Sisu, including a TED Talk, a number of articles, and more things that I'm hoping she'll tell us about. So welcome, Emilia.
Hi, Linda. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you as a guest. So let's start. Can you tell us a little bit about you? How did you get to be doing this stuff?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Finland, and I have been living abroad for about 9 years now, but I did grow up there, and since I was a little girl, I always heard about this construct of Sisu, and so it's something that has been kind of following me. And I remember when I was a little girl, I used to take on these challenges, and there were also times I was a pretty sick child when I was born, so I encountered a lot of adversities from the very first weeks and days of my life. So I think I've always had this kind of a Sisu narrative that has been around, and now I actually get to research that, so it's pretty exciting.
So you are a graduate student, a doctoral student, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So my background is in social sciences, so I did a master's in social psychology back in the day, and then I was working for the Finnish consulate for almost 8 years, and then because of some life events something that I experienced myself that was very traumatic, I became very interested in understanding that how humans endure extreme adversities. And at that point, I performed this full career switch. I quit my job with the consulate. I went back to school. I applied and I got into this program at the University of Pennsylvania called Masters in Applied Positive Psychology, which is a program launched by Martin Seligman, who's one of the founders of the field of positive psychology, and that kind of got me to this path that I'm right now, and trying to find ways to contribute to our collective human consciousness through this way.
That's great. So then from positive psychology, your focus became more concentrated on this area of Sisu.
Yes, that's correct. I think it was Angela Duckworth who first said this line that I'll never forget, that research is often me-search. So we end up examining things which are of some kind of very significant importance to us. And so a lot of the people in the positive psychology program, they're interested in flourishing and researching topics that relate to those themes. But I don't know, maybe it's my cultural background that led me, and my past experiences that led me to examine this other side of human experience, of how we overcome situations which are really difficult. Because if we really want to get this full understanding of the human life, we need to understand both sides, the flourishing side and then also when we face those difficult times. So that kind of resonated with me.
That makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. And I like your research is me-search. I actually did my doctoral dissertation on the balance between work and non-work in people's lives, and that's continued to be a theme in my world, is creating that balance. Would you be willing to offer us a definition of Sisu?
Yeah, so I most certainly would, because so when I started the research, and what got me into it was that although Sisu has been a really integral part of the Finnish culture for hundreds of years, and at the same time, I was not able to find an answer to whether Sisu is it something of a tendency or a character trait, is it something that only Finns have, or is it just a myth? So I was not able to find a really good type definition for Sisu, and that's what I started then digging in, and I performed this study, which actually attracted quite a lot of over 1,000 responses. And so based on this research that I conducted a couple of years ago, I can now say that Sisu, although it bears resemblance to things such as perseverance, but it's not so much about striving for a long-term goal, but Sisu is really this kind of it's extraordinary determination in the face of extreme adversity. From when we're really facing some kind of obstacles that seem to push us to our limits, and when we feel that we have reached the end of our mental or physical capacities, it's just almost kind of a second wind, borrowing this term from William James, that we tap into when we feel that we've exhausted all other resources that we have. So it's really functioning in the extreme dimensions.
So it's probably not a coincidence that this showed up in the culture in Finland.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Often, many of these constructs that we have, they often relate to the environment where people have to survive or where they're born and raised. I remember that it was Albert Bandura who said already in 1970s that humans learn quickest through observing other humans. So we learn through modeling other people's behavior. And I think that the really horrible situations that Finns had to survive for those hundreds of years in Finland, the first settlers, they really had no other option but to survive. And so I think Sisu really was it was forged in those years and those situations where we had to kind of see what we're made of. But at the same time, there seems to be this element that it's also about being a bit of an underdog, because of course we can witness this kind of Sisu type of behavior and how people respond in such ways in other cultures as well, whenever we're facing obstacles. But I think that why Sisu became such a thing in Finland might have something to do with the geographical location and the specific historical context of us we're sandwiched there between Russia and Sweden, and so that definitely plays a huge part.
Absolutely. The first time I went to Finland was in February, and short days and a lot of cold, I think, is also another ingredient for Sisu.
Yes, that's I'm a pretty avid long distance runner, and I'm living in San Francisco now, and life is very easy here. It's nice to go outside. It's always beautiful, and every time when I go back home for my research or for my studies, I'm reminded what a precious gift it is in a way to also have that experience of when you go outside and the weather might be pretty horrible. I mean, not always. Let's say wintertime, we have really nice summers. So, but at the same time, when you go outside and it's not so pleasant, it's not like you need Sisu to survive through something like that. But it does give you the opportunity to choose your attitude or choose your mindset when you face those minor obstacles. Because when really huge things happen, then you already have this frame of mind, or you have this schema in your mind that how do I react when I face obstacles, and that there's this transference, and we apply those same strategies. I mean, that's resilience. So we apply those strategies in different situations as well, which are tougher. So.
Yes, I've found that to be true in my own studies as well about resilience, that we can use the smaller challenges as a way to develop the mindsets and the habits and the ways of thinking, and as you say, the recognition of choice, so that we can take on the larger challenges. Yeah. So what do you see as the relationship between resilience and Sisu?
Yeah, so it's I love, I've been spending quite a lot of time trying to understand the difference and the similarities between, let's say, Sisu, resilience, grit, perseverance. And I would say, so based on this initial research that I've conducted, that Sisu almost seems to be something that, because resilience is seen as a process, right? So it's the positive adaptation to a trauma or tragedy or some kind of a challenge. So it's maybe the best way to describe it is that because there are different tools that we can use, or which are part of the skill of being resilient, such as being able to view situations in an optimistic view, having certain cognitive strategies, good problem-solving skills. I would say that Sisu is something that would go under the umbrella of resilience, that it's something that contributes to our ability to bounce back from adversities or start anew. But Sisu in itself is not the act of starting anew or getting our head back above the surface, but something that enables us to get to that point so that life may continue. So they almost act as a pathway to resilience.
One of the things I've been exploring, it does. It actually resonates with one of the things I've been exploring in some writing I'm doing on my next book is the notion that there's a terrain or a landscape of different kinds of adversities that vary in things like whether we chose them or whether they were thrust upon us and whether they last for a short time or a long time. And I have this map, and Sisu, in my mind, is in the upper right corner of the map. It's those things that we didn't choose that last for a long time. And so it's that sort of really tough adversity that we don't really have a lot of control over. And so I see it as one corner of the resilience universe.
I like that. It really resonates with me. And I sometimes say, because I'm trying to find ways to describe Sisu in a way that it's that makes it easy for people to understand how it's different or similar. So I sometimes say that Sisu begins where perseverance ends. So it's something that we don't spend necessarily a lot of time in the Sisu zone. So it's almost the last checkpoint. Or I really love what William James did not utter the word Sisu, but I really feel that he was talking about something similar to Sisu when he said that we often push beyond our capacities that we know we already have, that we don't test our limits, and we often give up sooner than we actually would need to. And I've witnessed this in my own life various times, in a more pleasant environment, let's say in sports, but also when I've gone through some very traumatic experiences in my life. And I'm sure many of the listeners can relate to this, that there are those moments when you feel like this is it. There is no way of overcoming this thing, and it just seems that it's the end now. But somehow, somewhere, we're able to reach towards some kind of a second wind or tap into this new level of energy, and it helps us, it pulls us out from this place, and then life continues, and we bounce back and we start building anew. So,
is there a social element to Sisu in your mind? Do we help one another demonstrate Sisu?
Oh, I'm so happy you mentioned that. I think half of my work revolves around this topic of how we enable Sisu for each other. And I'm very careful of not being kind of responsible for building another layer on this culture of that there's so much talk about mental toughness and how we should just will ourselves out from certain situations and we should be more strong. And we know this from research that those people who are resilient, they often have wonderful social support, or they've had safe connections as they were growing up, which has helped them to be able to trust and be stronger. So I really, my hypothesis is for future that Sisu definitely has this element as well. And in the Finnish culture, for example, when I talk about Sisu, I always bring this idea that instead of telling someone that, oh, you should have more Sisu or just go for it, it's more useful maybe to see like what I am doing to contribute to this person's ability to tap into their Sisu. Are they feeling safe when they have to take huge challenges in their lives? Or do they feel that there's a huge risk if they fail? So I definitely see Sisu as being in this social dimension. And I think it's my background in social sciences and being a humanist that is kind of seeping through.
I understand. And I agree with resilience as well. I was interviewed on a show last week, and one of the themes that came out of that is that resilience is a team sport.
Mm-hmm. Life is a team sport. I mean, that's just everything in the end of the day is team sport. And what I hope to see in the future is that we need to find ways to come back together as a species. I mean, there these boundaries that we keep building. It's just we know where that will take us, and because I'm kind of trying to figure out my own identity right now, honestly. So I'm a researcher, but I'm as much as I'm a researcher, I'm an activist. So kind of trying to fit these two identities together in some wonderful way.
I'd love to talk about both of those. Let's take the activist first. I was really struck when I saw your campaign around the year of Sisu. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's and I would add that social activist. So yeah, so that was something that was born from.
We just lost your sound, Amelia.
Oh no! Do you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I hope that will not happen again. So so Sisu, the year of Sisu was born from this beautiful collaborative enthusiasm with me and my friends in Finland. So the first time when the research was in the media was actually it took place here in the U.S. So the Business Insider wrote, Drake Baird wrote a beautiful article, and then Ray Kaufman wrote at the Scientific American, and there was in Forbes there was Giovanni Rodriguez. So it was kind of born here on this side of the Atlantic. But then I went back home to start working on my PhD on Sisu, and I met some of my really close friends there, and we were thinking, because Sisu was added in Finland, we have this name calendar, so each name has its very special day when it's celebrated. Tomorrow is Emilia's Day in Finland, actually, May 19th, and yeah, so Sisu is also a name, and it has been given to this date about, I think it's about 1,500 times. And so Sisu was given its own special name day for the first time in its history, and that is February 28th. And we started thinking that, well, if this kind of a wonderful thing happened, we should really celebrate this in some way. And the first initial idea was to organize some kind of a small-scale event at Academy of Philosophy, which is this research organization in Finland. But then we started talking to people about the research and our ideas, and there was just so much enthusiasm around it. And it started kind of taking its own shape and form, and it eventually became this entire year of Sisu, during which we really are hoping to spread this message of the innate capabilities that we all have, and this idea that there's so much more strength to us than what meets the eye. So there's definitely this, because Sisu is a Finnish construct that we've had for hundreds of years, or if even thousands of years. And so at the same time, it's something that the people own. It's something that everyone knows about. So there's this social, communal thing to it. And at the same time, there's the research side to it. So these two are coming together in a pretty nice way. So adding some kind of very tangible element to it, which is, it seems to be really helping people in their daily lives. And
Public events.
I'm sorry, say again?
Oh, I was just saying, so you've had some public events to bring this to people's attention?
Oh, yes. We had this launch event for the year of Sisu, which took place on the day of Sisu on February 28th in Helsinki. And we had over 300 guests there, and top performers from Finland, musicians, and speeches. We had greetings from U.S. Ambassador in Finland, Bruce Orek. We had Angela Duckworth, who gave a video greeting. Angela Duckworth is the famous researcher of grit at the University of Pennsylvania. And then we had the head of UN Women, Phumzile Ngombo, and she also sent a greeting, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful kickoff for this. And now there's a book on the way, and we've done this pretty beautiful photo projects where we took photos of this lady called Meri Goldaniemi, who's a wonderful photojournalist and an activist, definitely, in Finland. And she took photos of these 7 Finnish men and women whose face somehow just embodies this Sisu and this ability to. So there's this stoic calmness, but at the same time there's this hopefulness. So we had that photo campaign, and it reached the entire country. and we have TV documentaries on the way. And then there was the Hour of Sisu, which I know that you also were part of, the Hour of Sisu event on March 10th.
Right. Yes. And in fact, so my Hour of Sisu story is that the call to action for the Hour of Sisu was to, during that hour, to do something that took you outside of your comfort zone. And that was when I made the resolve to start this radio show.
Oh, wow. That's so great. I did not know that. That's such wonderful news. Well, that's a perfect example, Linda, because that's exactly what we were hoping that would happen. Because it's not that it's not insignificant what we think about our abilities or what we can or can't do. So what we think about that in our heads, because it always manifests in some kind of actions and behaviors. And sometimes we just need a little nudge from outside that that maybe other people are going beyond their limits, or they're collectively taking on some big challenges or taking action against odds or something like that. So there are these little narratives that get built around the world, and we have beautiful news from all over, all the way from New Zealand and the US, and a lot of people in Finland did things that they would not normally do. And it's just about stretching that comfort zone in a way that gives you feedback on your own abilities. Anyway, that was so wonderful to hear. I'm so happy.
Do you have other stories of things that are of Sisu that you can share?
Yeah, we heard stories of, for some people, actually, they were pretty touching. Some people told us stories about reaching out to people from their past, that they had a feeling that they had not necessarily, for example, treated them right. One friend of mine told this example that she had been acted in a bad way towards someone. This happened maybe 10 years ago, and she actually picked up the phone and called this person to apologize. And she said that it was just so scary because she did not know how this person would react. And so, I mean, it's beautiful, and in many ways that's building bridges, and it's part of this mission of mine, which has to do with how do we build these social bridges and how do we bring people a little bit closer together, instead of not just building our own resilience or Sisu and being tougher, but what's our contribution to the collective or to the community that we're part of. So
I know you've also been doing some stuff around Women of Sisu. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. So Women of Sisu if Sisu is something that I'm very passionate about. So Sisu as this idea of how can we empower people and allow them to reach their potential. So women are really close to my heart, and especially I'm a very avid anti-domestic violence advocate. And so I've had this dream for a long time to really start doing something to empower women and girls. And so then one day I think it was when I was Giovanni Rodriguez, who's a friend of mine and who writes for Forbes. So he mentioned that a friend of his started this Latin Women in STEM, I think, in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So this kind of a website. And then it just occurred to me that, well, why don't I do the same? Why do I keep waiting that later I will maybe do something, and when I'm wiser and more experienced? And that's kind of how it gets started. And right now there isn't much practical efforts that are taking place, but in the future I know that I am heading more toward this direction. So I'm excited to also see for myself that what will happen.
I can't wait to see how it all continues to unfold. Is there any research that you're working on right now that you'd like to tell us about?
Research.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just making sure. Yes, so right now what's happening with Sisu is that I'm continuing the work that has to do with clarifying of Sisu. So that's actually going really well, and I got this huge data from my first research that I conducted in 2013, and that was really good. And so eventually we will move on to, I am piloting a little scale on Sisu, but obviously that will take take time to get that to a point that we can actually start using it. But that's something that's going on. I am starting at this school called Singularity University at NASA Ames Research Center in June. So it's a 10-week program where the aim is to empower the participants, which are every year 80 out of about some 2,000 people who apply. So the idea is to empower these people to use exponential technologies, so all these new emerging technologies, and harness them in ways that we can improve the quality of life of the human species. So we can use technology not only for business profit, but in finding ways how we can, let's say, alleviate suffering and enable a more positive human future for all of us. So I'm really looking into how we can use virtual reality applications and augmented reality to help people who have undergone some kind of violent trauma to rewire those narratives that they have. So there are a lot of very, very exciting things happening in that front, and I think that'll take a lot of my time in the future, and I will find ways to combine this with this topic of Sisu and how do we empower people and help them to be more resilient and have more Sisu in those moments when it's needed, because we all know that adversities are something that we will never there'll never be a situation where we'll not encounter difficult times. So we'll always need those skills.
I agree with you on that. Absolutely. And teaching people before they need the skills, I think, is really important too. It's hard to learn to run when you're in the middle of the marathon.
Exactly. Yeah. That's well said.
So I would guess that you believe that Sisu is something that can be developed rather than just something that you either have or you don't. Is that right?
Yes, I would say that. And even more importantly, this kind of relates to the research that has been done by Carol Dweck at Stanford University, and she has dedicated her life in understanding mindsets and how our beliefs influence our behavior. So one of the questions that I asked in my survey was that, do you believe Sisu is something that you're either born with, or that it's an innate quality, or is Sisu something that you can develop through conscious practices or efforts? And over 70% of the respondents indicated that they believe that Sisu is something that you can develop. And over 50% of all the respondents were also engaging in such activities. And I think that in the light of Carol Dweck's research, this is a really, it's a wonderful, encouraging discovery, because if people don't believe that their Sisu can be developed, they're less likely to even engage in such efforts, and they might just become more passive in those situations when action is needed and Sisu is needed. So that's definitely, I'm very excited about that.
That's wonderful. Yes, I've always liked Carol Dweck's work as well. I think the mindset piece is really important.
It really is. It's almost like some missing link in so many of the things that we are doing. And when we look at willpower and how there's a lot of research saying that willpower is like a muscle, and then it gets depleted when we use it. And Carol Dweck repeated this research, and what they found out was that yes, willpower indeed seemed to be a limited resource, but only for those people who believed that it was a limited resource. So I mean, that's very interesting.
That is very interesting. I'll have to chase that down. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
So
I'll send you
one more question. I could talk to you for hours, but we only have a little bit of time left. Is it possible to have too much Sisu?
Oh, yes. I'm so happy you brought that up. So, yes, indeed. I often say when I give lectures on Sisu that the kind of healthy, good kind of Sisu is always, or it should always be informed by reason. So our understanding of our own abilities, our understanding of the situation at hand, and also because sometimes we just need to change directions and we need to change our minds. So there definitely are these elements to Sisu, especially in Finland. I feel that it's some kind of it's one of the negative cultural burdens that we have is that we do have sometimes too much Sisu, which leads us to being very stubborn, which leads us not to accept help from other people sometimes. So we feel that we just must do this alone and we must will our way out, and that can lead to really bad outcomes, to burnouts, and we're not machines, we're not built to just to go on and not have help from other people, and so there has to be this balance between Sisu and self-compassion, for example. So
that makes a lot of sense. So as we wrap things up here, can you let the listeners know where they can find more information on your work? Where would they look to connect more with your work on Sisu?
Oh, so I think, my website is fun. So it's my name, first name, last name, emilialahti.com. That's my researcher, social activist website. and then also just the slogan for Sisu is transforming barriers into frontiers. So I think just typing that into Google, Sisu transforming barriers into frontiers, will bring up some interesting things and other people's experience as well, and as well as what's going on with the research right now and the work. So
absolutely.
And you can
I've
always
also
email me.
Okay, and what's your email?
Oh, and my email would be, it's easiest to go to my website, and there's so that's probably the easiest to use the contact form. So I'm always happy to connect with people and give more information and just talk.
Amelia's TEDx talk on the introduction page for this program. So I hope you'll all take a chance to go find that and listen to it as well, because this is a woman with a lot of energy, and I expect great things from the Sisu campaign as we go forward. Thank you so much, Amelia. This has been a fabulous conversation, and I look forward to continued dialogue with you about resilience in Sisu.
Thank you so much, Linda. It was a huge pleasure.
There won't be a Resilience Radio show next week as we honor Memorial Day and the resilience and Sisu of those who have served our country. So join us on June 1st as I interview Daryl Connor, one of my early inspirations for studying resilience. He's a writer, consultant, and thought leader in the field of organizational change, and another tremendously interesting person. So we'll see you in 2 weeks on Resilience Radio.